Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. This is another Star Wars Radalorian video. Today we will be continuing our talk on my ratings of all the Star Wars films. So today we're going to be talking about the original trilogy, episodes 4, 5, and 6. George Lucas's kind of pride and joy. So to start off, episode 4, A New Hope. I'm going to give A New Hope an 8.1. You know, the first time I watched it when I was a little kid, it it got me interested. That's because you didn't know where they were going to go with the story. And I feel like that's why Star Wars kind of is the greatest movie series of all time, in my opinion. You go to a galaxy far, far away, and you never know what's going to happen next. We get introduced to Luke, Obi-Wan, C-3PO, R2, Chewie, Han, Leia, and really, they have obviously they didn't have the technology like we have now. I think that if they had the technology we had now, the movie would be even better. But for what they had in 1977, I think that they did a great job. I really like how they created Darth Vader. He was a great villain for the film. And using James Earl Jones's voice for him was spot on. The reason I'm giving it an 8.1 though is because you have a great storyline. It starts out with this young kid who loses his family and then joins the rebellion, and he's learning how to use the Force from Obi-Wan Kenobi, who we know is Anakin's best friend, Darth Vader's old best friend. And he doesn't want to tell Luke any of that because he doesn't want the burden on him. So Luke eventually learns, or doesn't learn, or learns the Force, and Obi-Wan sacrifices himself in order for them to escape the Death Star, escape with the plans, and basically start the Star Wars story off by having another great starfighter battle with the Battle of the First Death Star. So as the Death Star is slowly approaching Yavin 4, Luke is being talked to by Obi-Wan, and he's saying, "Use the Force, Luke." And this is when Luke is about to be destroyed by Vader, but Han comes in and kind of saves Luke and saves the day and allows Luke to take the shot with his proton torpedoes and blow up the first Death Star. Luke, Han, Chewie, they all come back as heroes. R2 as well. And that was kind of a great start, I think, to the Star Wars saga. You had a lightsaber battle between Obi-Wan and Vader. And they actually did a remake of this. There's a video of it on YouTube. If you type in Vader Obi-Wan, I think it's scene 46 or 146. I think it's 46, yeah. And they do a remake of the battle between Obi-Wan and Vader. I thought that was pretty cool because basically go from Vader and Obi-Wan fighting on each other, which at the time, obviously George Lucas didn't think too highly of how intense he wanted his lightsaber battles. But obviously a Jedi uses the Force and his lightsaber for defense, not attack. And in the remake, you kind of see that because it's basically Vader attacking the whole time. in the remake of the scene. But yeah, overall, I'd give it an 8.1. Next on my list is episode 5. Episode 5 is probably tied for the one spot for me. I actually, when I initially wrote it down, I gave it an 8.7, and I gave episode 3 an 8.6. To me, those two films are tied, I think. If I had to choose one, like if somebody told me you have to choose, I would probably choose episode 5 as an 8.7, just edging out episode 3. My reasoning behind that, though, is you get the Battle of Hoth to start out the movie. Like, that's cool. You get the AT-ATs introduce the big Imperial walkers on the snow planet, and you have Luke out there, making sure that everything's fine on the planet, and then he gets taken by the Wampa. You see him use the Force and his father's lightsaber, and then you have Han coming and saving him and whatnot, and then obviously the Empire finds them and comes and storms the blockade, and they leave. After that, you have Obi-Wan telling Luke basically he's got to go and find Master Yoda. So Luke and R2 split up, and Han, Leia, Chewie, and C-3PO are being chased by Star Destroyers at that time. So Luke goes to Dagobah, kind of this weird planet, and he finds Yoda. So he finds Yoda, and Yoda starts teaching him the ways of the Force, even though Yoda thought he was too old to begin the training. But Obi-Wan insisted because he said the Jedi would die out if you don't do this. And so he starts training, and he actually goes into a cave. So in the cave, because the cave was dark and cold, so Luke wanted to go see what it was. So he goes and sees what it is, and it's actually Vader. And he starts fighting Vader, and he actually cuts Vader's head off. And then Vader's mask explodes, and he sees himself inside of it. So that kind of tells us that he could become Vader if he uses his anger like his father did. But he still doesn't know that Vader's his father. During that time, Han, they kind of show their love for each other. And they eventually they escape and are on their way to Bespin. And that's where we're introduced to Lando Calrissian. So Lando basically makes a deal with the Empire to keep them out of their system forever if he turns over Han, Leia, Chewie, and C-3PO as bait so that Vader can capture Luke. Episode 5, we're also introduced to the Emperor, and the Emperor tells Vader, Luke's a threat, but then Vader wants to turn him to the dark side, and that they can only do it together to turn Luke to the dark side. So Luke senses that through the Force that Han, Leia, Chewie, 3PO, they're all in trouble. And he basically leaves and doesn't complete his training and goes on to fight Vader. So during this time, Han's frozen in carbonite. And he's alive, but he's given to Boba Fett to take to Jabba's palace. So that's what happens with Han. The reasoning they did Han in carbonite is because Harrison Ford actually wanted out of the series. And they weren't sure if he was going to return for episode 6. So they said that if he wasn't going to return, he was just going to die in carbonite. But if he was, obviously he would, unthaw and be fine. Um, but anyways, we have another great lightsaber duel between Luke and Vader. Um, I wouldn't say it was actually great. I would say it was good because Vader basically toys with Luke the whole time. Like, if he wanted to, he could have just destroyed Luke because Luke basically was at Padawan status at that time. And what happens is when Luke kind of hits Vader in the arm with his in the shoulder with his lightsaber, Vader gets pissed. And that's when he cuts Luke's hand off. And that's when we get the "No, I am your father" scene. When I first watched that, I was like, holy crap, there's no way. And that's kind of how episode 5 ends. So that's why I gave it an 8.6, 8.7, is because it's got the greatest reveal in movie history. So episode 6, we have Luke crafting a new lightsaber. And the lightsaber was actually parts that Obi-Wan had in case his lightsaber was damaged or destroyed. And Luke finds that in Obi-Wan's hut on Tatooine. So Luke actually he talks to Chewie, Lando, Leia, and tells them this plan, of how we're going to rescue Han from Jabba. So R2 and 3PO kind of infiltrate the place first, and 3PO is Jabba's translator, and R2 works on Jabba's sail barge. Lando kind of infiltrated the place already as another bounty hunter. And he's just kind of keeping low, working as one of Jabba's guards, kind of too. And then we have Leia coming in with the bounty of Chewie. So Leia then stays there that night, and she unthaws Han from carbonite, tries escaping, and they capture her. And then she is Jabba's new dancer, kind of. And Han and Chewie are captured downstairs in one of the cells. So that's when Luke walks in, and he basically tells him, "You can release my friends or be destroyed." So then we have Luke falling down into the Rancor pit and fighting the Rancor without his lightsaber. And he ends up throwing a rock at the door, and the door comes down and crushes the Rancor and kills him. And then we have Jabba basically telling them that they're all going to die. So he brings them to the Sarlacc pit on his sail barge, and Luke basically gives the signal to have R2 shoot his lightsaber to him, and they win the fight. Leia kills Jabba, and they end up leaving. So they get back to the fleet. Luke goes back to Dagobah to complete his training, and that's where he sees Yoda is, growing very old, and he's about to die. So Yoda tells there's another Skywalker right before he dies. So Luke then is talking to Obi-Wan and tells him that Obi-Wan tells him that he has another sister. There's another Skywalker, and it's his sister Leia. So they go to Endor to destroy the shield generator, and that ends up happening. Luke goes to the Death Star to confront his father and turn him back to the good side. And they have a very good battle. I think that this one's a lot better than the previous ones in this trilogy. And he ends up fighting Vader in front of the Emperor. He cuts off Vader's hand. And this is kind of, this is irony, because Vader cut off Luke's hand, and then that's when Luke looks at his hand and then looks at his father's, and he's like, "Okay, I can't kill my father because if I do, that the Emperor starts electrocuting. The Emperor starts electrocuting Luke, and Vader basically takes the Emperor and throws him down a mine shaft in the um, in the Death Star 2, and that's when we see Vader basically come back to the good side, and that's how Vader dies, and he becomes a Force ghost with Yoda and Obi-Wan, and that's how the film ends. So to wrap up episode 6, I'm going to give it an 8.2. My reasoning I gave it a lower score than 5 is because the Endor scene wasn't really my favorite, with all the Ewoks and everything. That's my only reason I kind of gave it a little bit lower of a score, but a little higher than episode 4. So yeah, that's what I got today. Let me know what you think about this video in the comments. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching today, guys.